We've got one final tune-up before the PGA Championship coming up next week, and we're doing so with a pretty star-studded field for this week at the AT&T Byron Nelson. A lot of big names competing for next week's championship are here as well, which means it's a fun event for PGA DFS. We're going to break down our top options over on FanDuel.com, let you know what you've got to know about TPC Craig Ranch, and get you set for what should be a fun event. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, good to talk to you for the first time, I think, since the Masters, which is weird. No, we did the one after that, too, because we did the one in person. But, I had one interaction with you in person and had to leave the podcast for several weeks as a result. But I'm back now, begrudgingly. How are you today?
Yeah, still recovering from that live show. It was just a little peculiar, and for anyone who's been listening the past 2 weeks, it's been peculiar because it's just me, and we bring very different energy levels to the show, and I think we balance each other out well. If it's all just one of us, I think it loses a little bit of the heat check flair, but I'm glad to have you back.
If it's all heat, where is the check?
Hey, you're the heat, I'm the check.
That's that. If it's all checks, I feel like, it's profitable. So that's good. So at least probably the past couple weeks have gone well. Do you feel like you've excelled? No? Oh, you shook your head. Not good?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I had some good picks out there. I'll tell you that much.
Sure you did, bud. I'll believe you.
I've been up, and for anyone who's not watching, I'm doing hand gestures, so that's not good audio.
Great radio.
Not good radio.
Great radio.
I've been close for my outright win picks for a while, but I mean, if you're not top 5 or top 10 in those bets as well, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But boy, it's been flying a little close to the sun. Eventually, I'll fly into the sun, which is how I envision. Well, to make the metaphor work, I got to get there to fly into the sun.
Isn't that not the point?
Yeah, but I mean, I was locked into.
Doesn't
the
that
metaphor.
mean death?
Yeah,
I'm not an expert
Icarus.
on the sun. I try not to talk about things that I don't know that well. But as someone who thinks the sun is quite hot, not sexually, but like someone who has an impression of the sun, I feel like you probably don't want to fly into it. Question mark?
Yeah, but I was doing the Icarus metaphor here.
But he dies when he flies too close to the sun. Do you want to fly directly into the sun?
But I need to get high. I need to go higher and get hotter to hit some of these. Maybe there's just a little. Maybe it's not into the sun, but maybe just.
So your pinnacle is death
because I was locked into the metaphor.
Just pivot, man. Just pivot.
Well, what am I supposed to pivot to?
Pivot to something else. One that doesn't involve flying in the sun and burning to death. I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take, literally on my part, to say, hey, it seems bad to fly into the sun and die. But I don't know. Maybe I'm contrarian here.
This is why you're the heat. You know all the stuff about the heat. I'm just out here trying to provide the check. I got in.
I'm checking you, man. I'm the heat and the check right now. You're just a little too hot. Coming in too hot. So we're gonna bring you back down. We're gonna bring you back down and talk here about TPC Craig Ranch. That is where they're at for this week's AT&T Byron Nelson. It is 7,468 yards and a par 72. Last year was the first PGA Tour event at this course. So 1 year of course history data. We'll still have a course history section for today, but keep that in mind that not a ton of data here. There are 156 golfers in the field. Woof. The top 65 plus ties make the cut after 2 rounds. So we got to find dudes who will make the cut. Oh boy, my favorite kind of PGA event. What could possibly go wrong? Brandon, again, just 1 year of data here. But when we look at that 1 year of data, what stands out to you in terms of emphasis for TPC Craig Ranch?
Yeah, so it's pretty long for a par 72, about 90 yards longer than the average par 72 on the PGA Tour, a bit wider fairways. If you look at things from a fairway acre to yardage ratio, it's a 4.7. PGA Tour average in my database is a 4.1. Larger green sizes as well, just shy of 6,800 square feet on average. PGA Tour average is 6,000 square feet, so about 113% of the average PGA Tour green size. So basically what I'm saying here is long, yes, but wider fairways, larger greens. And if you can believe it, that's led to some scoring last year. Winning score 25 under for Kyung Hoon Lee. The cut line 6 under par. That's pretty easy. So you kind of woofed at the 156 golfers in the field. That leads to some extra volatility. Not that every one of those golfers toward the bottom of the field is a contender by any means, but full field, low scores. That leads to increased volatility. So I did make sure to factor that in to my simulation model for this week. But as far as the key stats go for what matters, then still strokes gain approach is it's super vital. And I'm kind of keeping my key stats pretty simple because we need ball striking to hit these greens in regulation, get in birdie chances. And so for me, some of the things that I noted here were that last year's top 3 finishers or finishing positions, which included 6 total golfers due to ties, they ranked 2nd, 6th, 42nd, 7th, 5th, and 4th. So 5 of those 6 were top 7 in strokes gained approach. One outlier, Scott Stallings, was 42nd, but he led the field in strokes gained putting. So that is why approach is usually in my model. I have approach at like 30%, which is a lot already for one stat. I upped that to about 40% for this week. And speaking of that putting with Scott Stallings, Data Golf has this cool, I mean, they have a lot of cool stuff, but they have a course table that shows details on particular courses that have been played on the PGA Tour with ShotLink data. And it shows things like, is it easy to putt here or is it hard to putt here? Is it easy from different ranges? This was last year. And again, it's just 1 year of data. So I'm trying not to get too far into this, but also I think I'm going to get too far into it anyway, because that's all we know of the course. It's really easy to putt here. So if we need ball strikers to hit these greens, usually we need good putters still to convert those birdie chances. But if it's easy to putt here statistically, a few names that the Heat Check listeners might have heard in the past will probably come up again this week. So basically, like, what it comes down to is it's wide, bigger greens, scores are going to go low. You want strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, putting, and birdie or better rate gain.
So you're saying it's Will Zalatoris Luke List-ism? Is that what we're coming to here?
The Willsies, Luke List is definitely on the radar, but even at the pinnacle of that type of archetype is Justin Thomas. Like, his strength is not his putter. His strength is his ball striking, his tee to green play. This should set up well most courses do, but like, if you look at things from an advantage standpoint, like who should benefit most from if these greens are easy to putt on?
Yeah.
JT probably. Level that playing field, mitigate the gap between his putting and some of the other golfers putting. So I think JT is someone we're going to talk about a lot this week, even though we have Scotty Scheffler in the field.
All right, well, I'm building up my lineup now. It's just going to be bad putters, and I'm going to feel great about it until they actually start golfing, and I'm excited for that. We're going to dive into golfers who did well here last year on the one event and other stuff you need to know for this week's field. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, we, of course, are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. You name it, you can find us there. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Also, sports fans, there's no better time than today to sign up for FanDuel Fantasy with, of course, the PGA Championship coming up next week. Sign up this week, get your feet wet, get yourself ready for next week. Because for users who have yet to make a deposit on FanDuel Fantasy, you can deposit today to receive 2 free entries. All you have to do is deposit a minimum of $10 into your FanDuel DFS account, and you will be instantly rewarded with 2 free vouchers. This is a limited time offer, so be sure to deposit now and play for free. Head to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Let's dive into last year's event here at TPC Craig Ranch. Talk about Sam Burns, finished second behind KH Lee last year, and Burns is another one of our favorites, but Brandon, not a bad putter. So I am upset that you're talking about him. It seems like you're going counter to the spirit of this week. What do you see with Sam Burns?
Yeah, not a bad putter is Sam Burns, but not a bad golfer is Sam Burns either. He's basically become what some of the prospects that I've liked have been wanted them to become. He's basically been that just phenomenal at basically everything. I think that for anyone who doesn't necessarily understand how good Sam Burns is, just pull up some of the stats and you'll see that there's really nothing that he can't do well, and that was evidence last year here when he led the field in strokes gained tee to green and was top 10 in all three of those tee to green stats. So off the tee, approach, and around the green, but had just a neutral putting week that week. So the slight disappointment there to finish runner up, but sets up well for success here. Again, one of the best ball strikers on tour. The recent results are there. Runner up at the Zurich. I never know. I should probably know, but I never know.
Pretty sure it's Zurich.
Zurich, yeah. Zurich.
I actually don't know, but I think it's.
Well, he played with Billy Horschel, so
Zurich.
All right. So
I think we just look at the horse school things. That's funny to me. What is this podcast of not amusement for just us?
Yeah, it would be would be the Heat. No, I'm not
Heat chuckle.
Well, no, because we got the CH, but at the front. So
Heat Schneck. Sheck.
Boy, this one. Maybe people are just waiting for us to do solo pods again after all this, but
yeah,
I don't blame them. Runner up at the Zurich. With Billy Horschel, missed the cut at the Masters in his debut there, which I'm able to forgive. Won the Valspar, 26th at the Players, 9th at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He's putting well, even with expected regression, which I lay out on an article in numberFire. Just reference it moving forward. But putting well, going to regress a bit, but still be one of the best putters on the planet. What we talk about is Bermuda splits a lot, but he's good on bent grass. So I have no issues with Sam Burns. He's going to be one of my favorite plays. I think that I could start a lineup with Sam Burns, or I could try to get to Sam Burns alongside another stud and feel really good with that. What are your thoughts on Burns this week?
I have no pushback to give. I wish I did because it's more fun, but I have nothing. And I think the fun thing with Burns is, again, I think that if we are emphasizing birdies for this week, which we should, given how low the scores will go, he not only has the components of a birdie maker via the putting and the ball striking, but also he just gets birdies. It's statistically he gets birdies. He ranks 4th in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National, behind DJ, JT, and Scheffler. That's great company. It shows that, I think that what that shows to me is that he is very worthy of that salary. He's 11-4. That's a good number for someone with that ability. And I think that it kind of goes along with what you said, where you can either start a lineup with him or pair him with one of those other guys and feel pretty good about it. And honestly, I talked about Zalatoris. I think a lineup of Burns Zalatoris is really fun at the top. I'm not opposed to that at all. So I think that Sam Burns, I find no reason to push back. I think he's a pretty good play for this week. Fully on board.
Nice.
He is also the cover boy for this week's podcast over on YouTube with his mustache. So that's positive as well. Let's talk here about someone who will fit with the narrative of we can be more comfortable with some bad putters. It's Johnny Vegas. He's a bomber, and he showed that off here last year. Vegas, super well-rounded at the Byron Nelson last year, gained at least 1.5 strokes in all 4 strokes gained categories, including 3.1 off the tee, 2.1 in approach, and I rag on him for being a bad putter, but it's been getting better recently. He gained he gained 2.5 last week. That's his 4th time in the past 5 measured events, gaining at least 1.8 on the greens. And that is how Vegas notched 3 straight top 20 finishes, but it's also jacked up Vegas' salary. He's 10-2. So it's no longer like a Kokrak range where Vegas is 93. He's 10-2. And that's a pretty legit number, especially if you want to jam in 2 guys above 11,000. So Brandon, where do you sit on Vegas given the blend of course fit and current form?
I like him. I think he can make a more balanced lineup work, which I don't think is the route I'm going to go, even though we have a lot of golfers in the mix based on what we know, the course playing easy and being a bit wider should keep a lot of golfers in play. But I think for me, I'm going to focus more on some studs and overlook this range. But if I am in this range, Vegas definitely, now don't quote me on this, but if I'm looking in like 98 to 10-6, it's probably Vegas number one for me.
Mhm.
He should be able to take advantage here. And again, if the course does play easy, if the greens play easy, that should level the playing field, be good for Vegas. But while he's not the best putter, the underlying data for him is fine. If he can be a neutral putter and gain tee to green, that's a good recipe for him this week. So he's definitely on the list for me.
Yeah, I think that with Vegas, I agree with you where it's more so like I'm just not going to be in that range as much because the other part of it, there are some guys in the mid 9,000s, like 9.3 to 9.5, 9.7, who are really, really good. And I'm okay taking that discount to get myself more flexibility at the top. So with Vegas, if I'm there, totally on board with him, but I'm not going to force it because I do think that range below him is pretty good. Now, the range below him, even further, is good too because Patton Kizzire there is there at 9,000. And Kizzire, one of the guys who played well here last year, and also it's got some good stats for this week. So what do you see with Kizzire at $9,000 based on what he did last year?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just based on what he did last year, which is what you want to see whenever we talk about golfers with past form at a course. But he was in that cluster at T3 last year. Had some up and down strokes gain stats, though, which is kind of interesting. Fourth in putting, which typically is a bit of a red flag to be that good, but it's never bad to be able to be that good. So I always want to try to make that clarification and not just write it off. But also fourth in approach among the cut makers. And if you could pick two stats to be top five in, you would pick approach and putting because those are the two stats you can just statistically gain the most strokes on the field by doing well in a particular week. Basically 60th, though, among cut makers off the tee and around the green. So had the irons in the putter, but everything else sort of fell apart. But that was good enough for a T3. Among the field over the past year, he is in the 84th percentile in approach. At least field average in the others when I use my adjusted stats there over that sample. And he's a great putter from 5 to 10 feet and from within 15 overall, which is a key range always. So he's setting up, I think, for a really good play, to be a really good play at a value salary. So spoiler alert, I know we both like Kizzire, but how high are you on Kizzire? How high is I won't say it.
The desire
Nope.
for Kizzire is
Nope.
through the roof. He is a player pick for me. Is he for you as well?
He was going to be, but because I know, we decided we could pick the same golfers for our player picks, but for the simple fact that we're naming a lot of the studs in the 11,000 range, and I'm going to lock in maybe three, not in every lineup, but like when I'm building my lineups, 3, maybe 4 studs, and then rotate into values. I figured it was fitting to pivot away from Kizzire, name someone else in a little bit more detail.
So you're saying your desire for Kizzire is not high enough to deserve him. You don't deserve Patton Kizzire, is what you're saying.
If that's what you need for me to say to move forward, let's say that one.
Okay, fine. Hater. I'll let Patton know that you're hating on him. Just fuel his motivation, his desire to win this week. So that's what we'll go with. Let's talk about KH Lee, who won here last year, kind of burying the lead a little bit by putting KH Lee down here. But defending champ, he checks him with a value salary 89, but potentially value salary for a reason. Lee was a monster with his approach last year. He gained 8.3 in approach. So even though he did gain 4.5 putting, it was not a fluky win. Like, he earned it via good ball striking. The reason the salary is low for Lee is that the form is mixed at best. He has made just one of his past 4 cuts. That was a 25th last week, largely fueled by good putting there. Last week was the first time Lee had gained an approach since the American Express back in January. So we're emphasizing approach. Lee had good approach last year and was okay last week, but has largely been underwhelming there. And underwhelming is probably generous. So even with the win, I'm probably not on KH Lee this week. What about you?
Yeah, I think he'll probably look, I'm going to have a lot of value golfers in my player pool. He's not completely off of that necessarily, but he's not necessarily one of the top plays for me either. I could name at least 5 plays toward that salary range, 6, maybe 7, depending on what that range specifically is for you. But I'm just not going to chase it. I think that there's more with some other options here.
I think that's where I'm at too. So, obviously played decently well last week and has shown it here before, not a high salary, but do like some other guys. We'll talk about them later on. I've in the current form section first, so and talk about Tommy Fleetwood. Fleetwood is 98, and that range is probably more so where I want to live than the Vegas range above 10,000. So let's talk about Fleetwood. Is Fleetwood someone based in his current form who could be in that consideration set at $9,800?
Yeah, so it sounds silly to nitpick between like 10-2 and 9-8, but like if you go 9-8 and a little bit below, or 10-2 and a little bit above, and you build out a lineup with maybe a Justin Thomas, Sam Burns start, you see that really is sort of crucial. So Tommy Fleetwood, definitely someone I wanted to take a longer look at, because I feel like Tommy Fleetwood is just a more popular golfer than I view him as deserving to be, not because of his personality. Seems like a cool guy, but just based on the stats that I look at. But he's really turned things around for me. And because he's a big name in this range, he could be a little bit more popular, again, from a FanDuel standpoint, than I think he deserves. But there's a lot to like. Missed the cut at the Zurich, which is whatever. But prior to that, 10th at the RBC Heritage, 14th at the Masters, 16th at Valspar, 22nd at the Players, 20th at the Arnold Palmer. And in his past 20 rounds, Fleetwood ranks 5th in true strokes gained and 12th tee to green, according to Data Golf. I'm not usually in on Fleetwood, like I said, but he's interesting. I don't know if he's tops here. There are two golfers specifically at 97 just below him that I might prefer and could possibly get a popularity discount on, with Aaron Wise and Maverick McNeely. So any thoughts for you on Fleetwood?
I agree with you, specifically naming those two guys as being options. I prefer both McNeely and Wise over Fleetwood for this week. And that's without considering popularity. I just like them more straight up, honestly. So I would say, to me, they're the considerations. The one thing that I want to keep in mind, though, is that I probably will be in this range quite a bit. Like, I have my default lineup built out right now, because obviously I was not listening to you when you're talking about Fleetwood. I had to build instead. And there are two guys in that range in my lineup. So I'll be in this range a lot, which means I'll need more than just two guys. But honestly, there are a couple others too. I'm like you could push back on Lonto Griffin if you wanted, but I think I like Lonto more. Sepp Straka is 94. Griffin's 95. I think I like both those guys more than Fleetwood too. So I think for me, Fleetwood does make sense and not totally opposed to him, but I think that he'll wind up he'd be a rotational guy after I get my requisite exposure to those others, is kind of where I'm at. Is Fleetwood in the same range for you, because it also could be a situation where I just like Griffin and Straka more, but what are your thoughts on him relative to the rest of that tier?
I don't really like a lot of this tier. So we have Fleetwood at 98, along with Alex or Alexander Noren, depending on your preference there. Then if we're skipping over Wise and McNeely, it's Kisner, Davis Riley, Adam Hadwin, Lonto Griffin, Sepp Straka, Matt Kuchar, who I'll talk about in just a second, honestly. But I don't like any of those guys, honestly, to the point that I'm going to play them, which is why I think Wise and McNeely stand out to me.
Right.
So I'm either going with Vegas at 10-2, Wise McNeely at 9-7, or a duo or trio in the low 9,000 range with Keith Mitchell, Mito Pereira, or Luke List.
Do you want a head-to-head on Fleetwood versus... No, I don't. Just kidding. Ignore me.
Who was it?
I was going to offer you Straka or Lonto, but I feel like you would have taken Lonto and said yes. So I decided to revoke. I'm not doing it. I don't want to lose. I can't lose.
Honestly, for me though, Fleetwood does rank last in my model.
Okay.
Which again, of those three, it doesn't seem like he should, but he does, and that's why I always tend to be low on him. Even though I'm higher on him than normal, I think I'll still be lower on him than consensus. Okay.
So let's talk about Will Zalatoris, someone we probably will not be lower than consensus on, because Will Zalatoris is 11-2, and it's it's in part because there are some big names this week pushing him down. And I think that that's actually a discount I want to take advantage of. Zalatoris played well at the Zurich Classic, but more importantly, it came after a 6th place finish at the Masters where he didn't putt terribly, which was kind of fun. Zalatoris has played 8 total events since January 1st. He has been 6th or better in 5 of those 8 events. He ranks 4th in true strokes gained the past 6 months, trailing Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama. But obviously the putting is brutal, but if we care less about that this week, it should shift our view of Zalatoris. So I like Zalatoris a lot at 11-2. Where do you wind up on him?
Yeah, I love Will. I was kind of torn on him between Will Zalatoris and Sam Burns.
She's both, man.
Which is a very viable strategy, especially if you're not starting off with Justin Thomas. I know we're kind of burying the lead with Scotty Scheffler.
We'll touch on him.
We'll get to him.
Yeah.
I have nothing against him. How could you? Whether on or off the course,
I've got on the course narratives to discuss with you later, but go ahead.
Okay. Well,
they're very important.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You missed a lot of narratives for the NFL draft, which we were disappointed about on the stream, but we'll talk about that at a more appropriate time. But yeah, Zalatoris for me, definitely one of the top 3 plays at salary. It's some combination of JT, Burns, and Zalatoris for me. I've implemented a sort of spike week stat for tee to green and putting. Where if you gain enough strokes in either, I don't need to get into the math of it, but he ranks 4th in spike weeks in tee to green. He's honestly not that bad in putting. He's just below average in putting. And if you kind of weight that as what's more important, really good upside, which is not a surprise, but if we're playing the angle that putting is a little bit easier this week on these greens, someone like Zalatoris should get a much bigger edge than some other golfers, and I want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that Zalatoris is pretty fun. I think the Burns Zalatoris lineup is fun, but also I think Zalatoris, if we're looking at golfers at 11-2 or higher, I would not be shocked if Zalatoris is the golfer to whom I had the most exposure. I would not be surprised by that at all, honestly, just because I feel really good about him. I like the salary. He checks a lot of key boxes and fits every build that I want to go with. So let's move now to Matt Kuchar. You teased this before. Kuchar is 94, but Brandon, it's a bomber course. Kuchar, not quite there. What do you see with him recently?
Well, he's sort of back for being Matt Kuchar. Past 4 results on tour have been a T2 at the Valero Texas Open, T3 at RBC Heritage, T49 at the Wells Fargo, and T16 at Valspar. But he's gaining a lot of strokes from putting and around the green, which are the least predictive stats of the 4 strokes gained categories. It's not that they don't matter. That's not what I'm saying here. And it's not that it's completely random. That's also not what I'm saying here. It's just, it's hard to keep doing that week to week compared to ball striking. And so that's a bit of a red flag. Maybe an orange or yellow flag, depending on what your system says is worse. I don't know. It just depends on that system that you got going on. But over the past 20 rounds, he is 2nd in strokes gained around the green, 13th in putting, according to Data Golf's true strokes gained metrics, but 110th off the tee and 49th in approach. I do think we should be a little bit wary of Kuchar at a course that should require a lot of birdies and some distance. But that's not to say he's unplayable. He was T17 here last year. He does make some birdies if he plays within himself. He can definitely do some things here, but I think he will not be someone that I'm targeting. We talked about this range in good detail. He was not a name I was particularly interested in, and I would rather jump down to someone like Mito, for example.
Yes, we've seen Kuchar finish well, but I think that finishing well at certain courses is different than finishing well at others, and I think that at this kind of course where you need to go solo, where I do want to prioritize some distance, is his upside in this specific context as high as what he's shown recently? I don't think so. I know he's finished really well recently, but best case scenario for Matt Kuchar, what do you think? 15th this week? Probably. Maybe 10th?
Where is he in my... I have it sorted weirdly. Then I'll just say 15th. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
nobody needs the numbers.
I think that's quite not enough for me, especially I like this range more than you do, given the presence of the guys just above it. But also, again, I mentioned Lonto's 95, Straka's 94. I think both those guys, to me, better options than Kuchar. Neither guy's super, super long either, but they're also not short. So I think that I go that direction versus Kuchar at 94. So let's talk about Kurt Kitayama. Kitayama is taking advantage of some of the regulars taking a rest the past couple weeks after the Masters. So the question now is, can Kitayama carry that against a tougher field? Kitayama's finished 2nd and 15th the past 2 weeks. He's done that thanks to some really nice ball striking. And we've seen Kitayama stroking out the tee with good distance. He ranks 15th in the field in distance gained the past 50 rounds. He's 25th in approach. And Kitayama did have a 3rd place finish at the Honda back in February too. So some other good finishes there. But the time between then and before then was pretty rough. So I do like the ball striking, and we do want to prioritize ball striking this week, but he's had some high-end finishes that don't seem as sustainable based on other data. It's tough. So are you buying into the top-end finishes we've seen from Kitayama recently at a value salary for this week?
Okay, so if I want ball striking at 91, I have Luke List.
Correct.
And I'm going to get better ball striking.
Correct.
Kitayama, over the past 50 rounds on tour, is in the 80th percentile. So good here on strokes gained putting from 15 plus feet. So he's gaining some strokes on longer putts. He's in the 18th percentile, bad, from within 15 feet. So that implies that he should cool off with the putter. Not that he's been phenomenal necessarily overall with the putting, but he should not necessarily have a lot of upside with the putter this week. Again, I want to be clear because I'm downplaying putting to a big degree, and I just said that I'm going to play Luke List. So I want to shine some light onto that I'm not oblivious here. But if I'm going to take the risk, give me Luke List.
I like the way that sounded with ist. It's like
a political slogan.
Yeah, no, I like it. Embrace the risk, ride Luke List. I'm into it. And I think that I'd agree too, because with Kitayama, I agree with your way of thinking about it, where if I want to go with the guy who gets me the ball striking, I'd rather go with Luke List. And List does make birdies despite the fact he can't putt. He ranks 8th in birdies or better gained the past 50 rounds. According to Fantasy National, there's some other guys down here who can make some birdies too. Like Tom Hoagy is in that discussion at 86. So I would say, to me, probably no Kitayama. Excited that he's doing well. And I think that the ball striking is good, but I can get just as good ball striking and even better ball striking from others in this range as well, who may not be due for as much putting regression as Kitayama may be. Let's dive into the bookmaker odds. You can't regress if you're bad.
I was going to say,
that's plus. Yeah. No, I know.
Luke List has nowhere to go, but up.
He's consistent. He's consistent. Consistently awful. That still counts. Bookmaker odds for this week. Scotty Scheffler, the favorite of FanDuel Sportsbook. He is plus 950. Then you get down to Justin Thomas on an island at 13-1. Jordan Spieth is 17-1. Next year is Dustin Johnson and Sam Burns. They are both 19-1. Followed by Xander Schauffele at 21-1. Will Zalatoris is 24-1. We got Brooks Koepka at 31-1. Then Hideki Matsuyama and Joaquin Niemann rounded the top group at 34-1. So Scotty Scheffler, clear favorite for this week, and for good reason. Are you approaching him in that same way this week for DFS? What's your view of Scheffler versus JT and more for this week?
Well, you told me you had a narrative about Scheffler.
I do.
Is this the right time for it?
It's a DGAF narrative. We saw it with Shane Lowry after his major win. Scotty Scheffler, not only winning a major, but winning everything else, Can we trust Scotty Scheffler to care if we're going to pull out the DGAF narrative? I don't know, man. So this is mostly a justification for me to talk up my boy Justin Thomas. It's not an actual thought process. Okay. But the DGAF narrative is in play with Scotty Scheffler. I think we have to weigh that in heavily to the model. You said approach is 30% or 40% this week. DGAF narrative should be at least 36% then, relative.
So is that good or bad for Brooks?
Well, So the DGAF narrative can only be bad
Okay.
because when he gaffs, he does well.
Okay.
So the DGAF narrative is always a negative.
Gotcha. I got a lot to learn about.
Unless there's someone who's like too rigid and like they're playing loose. Like if we got a DGAF narrative with like Matthew Wolf, I could say that could be an adjust up. Like if, cool down a little bit, that might be a good thing.
Yeah,
But
Matthew Wolf's out there to have fun, he said.
That's good. So maybe little DGAF upward adjustment. Wolf, had some good rounds last week. Maybe then, but DGAF narrative bad for Brooks, bad for Scheffler. And I think that should weigh heavily on our minds this week.
So I don't know. I'm struggling with this because all my research and just assumptions here, pretty safe assumptions, are that Scottie Scheffler will be a chalky DFS play because he's the betting favorite and he is the highest salary golfer on FanDuel. That almost always leads to being the chalk. But according to fansharesports.com, it's a pretty dispersed top of the field aside from slamming Sammy Burns, who is running away with fanshare tags. So we're going to have to take a long, hard look at Burns and say...
Where's Zalatoris on that?
So Zalatoris is T3. It's early, so I'll just say Burns has 13 tags. Taylor Gooch has 7. And Will Zalatoris and Matt McNeely have 6. So, it's a pretty...
Emphasizing off the tee. I think of Taylor Gooch right away. That's exactly where I'd want to turn. Good golfer. He's not exactly a kind of guy I'm prioritizing here, but, whatever.
So, wow, I thought Hideki was going to be like the Galaxy brained play, but he's up there too.
Where's JT?
T9.
Okay, so JT is the play. Easy.
But name anyone else at the top, and it's Scheffler, DJ, Xander. I don't know if this is not the right fit for Xander because it's going to be too.
Also, we have the wedding narrative with DJ, which is very important. That's always up.
Spieth, Brooks, if you want to go that route.
So I would say, if your assumption going in is that Scheffler will be mega, mega, mega chalk because your research has said highest salary guy, betting favorite, that will be true this week, but it's less true than usual. So, I guess I wouldn't view Scheffler as being prohibitively chalky this week. Are you getting the same vibe?
Yeah, if that's the case, then I love Scheffler because This is a ball striking course. He can go low. He is just phenomenal. He is, and I just implemented this today, so it's not completely up to, the data is right, but I haven't implemented it. So he has spike weeks with his tee to green at 40% of the time and putting 30% of the time. Only Sam Burns also meets those 40-30 thresholds. So, we know that the upside is there for both of those guys.
Yeah. Pretty
phenomenal there.
What about for a cash game? Is Scheffler your stud in a cash game, or do you want to go more balanced with Zalatoris and Burns? Because my concern is although I'm downplaying putting this week, I'm not sure if Zalatoris is a cash gamey play. There I'd prefer Burns in a cash game, and I also might want to go Scheffler in a cash game too. I
do have Burns a tier above Zalatoris because of that safety.
Yeah.
He has just as much upside with the tee to green, but 3 times as much with the putter. So cash games,
Scheffler or JT? Let's shift that because I agree with you on Burns. Yeah. Scheffler or JT for cash?
For cash games, it probably should be Scheffler. Well, no, I'm gonna go JT.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if anyone cares about any of this, but I think it's really cool data, and it does actually pass the eye test. But if you want to talk about 80th percentile results in tee to green play, meeting that threshold, JT does that 63% of the time. Hideki's at 53%, so 10 percentage point gap over Hideki, who's awesome. And then it's Zalatoris at 44%, Taylor Gooch at 43%. Speaking of. And Sam Burns at 42%. So JT's tee to green play, his ability to just dominate tee to green is pretty much off the charts. So I'm going to go JT, save a little bit of salary from Scheffler.
Well, that's the
I
key
don't think
thing
you
I was
can go
going to
wrong.
note is that JT plus Burns is the exact same salary as Scheffler plus Zalatoris. So
Give me that one.
I think that's where I'm at too. I'm using that against you this week for the head-to-head, just so you're aware. But
JT and Burns?
Yeah.
Oh, that's already been locked in for me.
All right, cool. So we're on the same page there. Which golfers' odds have shifted since things opened on FanDuel on Monday?
Just about everybody's. But some odds that have shortened, which I think are notable, even if it's just slight. Sam Burns 20-19, Will Zalatoris 22-21, Adam Hadwin 65-46. So big movement there. Not necessarily the right. I'm not saying it's wrong for him, but not necessarily the type of golfer that we're talking up a lot. So that's noteworthy. Maverick McNeely 55-50, Sebastian Munoz 95-70. And then Matthew Wolff 100-90. So those are the notable shortening odds. Lengthening odds.
Wait, let me ask you a question quick. With Wolff, did you see enough last week where you actually want to buy into it, or not yet?
So this is, I learned from one of my coworkers named Jim Saunas.
Someone in France said my last name right, and it blew me away. It's not a French name, but like someone said it right, and it just flabbergasted me. It was wild.
That's a cool flex that you went to France, but
yeah. Where do people think I've been the past couple weeks?
Nobody knows, man. But I mean, look, like Matthew Wolff came out, was talking about his mental health and saying that he was bringing himself down, bringing down the his playing partners by being, just negative. And so he said he's trying to turn things around, just enjoy it, not trying to win, but just having fun. I think that would qualify as like a new relevant sample for him.
Sure.
If you look at all the past data, I'm not saying like what he did last week is who he is exactly. It's like this is kind of a new leaf, a new perspective here for Wolff. So while that's not enough for me to want to bet him necessarily, I think it's reassuring, and he's going to be someone that we have to do a little bit of oversights with, some similar to Brooks. Like, Brooks for the PGA Championship is not going to rate out well on my model unless I manually adjust things. Maybe Matthew Wolff is in that range, but as far as DFS, as far as betting goes this week, I'm probably not going to get there.
Sure.
But good on him, and I'll root for him.
Yeah, and I think that I'm okay with buying into upside if the upside is there. But with Wolff, we've actually seen spikes before. When things have been going well, he's been a very good golfer. And like he does have giddy up. He's got some horses off the tee. So
he does.
So I think that like I'd be okay with taking swipes. If you're multi-entering and are okay killing some lineups, which you should be, if you should be gunning for upside at all times, I think Wolff would fit that well. So I'm open to it, is what I would say for this week. Who is lengthened? That's noteworthy.
Brooks 26-31. Two guys I thought that might get some buzz because of what I'm seeing with the course, just looking for ball strikers. Joaquin Niemann and Hideki Matsuyama 31-34. Taylor Gooch 37-41. So lengthening on the odds board, but getting a lot of buzz on FanShare. Cameron Champ 41-46 and Adam Scott 42-48.
Okay. Which lower salary golfers have odds to stand out to you?
We have Sebastian Munoz now at 70-1. He's 8,800 on FanDuel. CT Pond, Matthew Neesmith, Patton Kazire, KH Lee, JJ Spawn, Sahith Theegala, and Matthew Wolff, all now 90-1. And then a trio at 100-1 includes Brandon Wu, Aaron Ray, and Tom.
Sorry. I can't let it go. My bad.
And Tom Hoagy. I love Tom Hoagy.
Yeah. With Munoz shortening, I thought... So I know you like Munoz, and I know he's in your player picks. I was a bit surprised by that. What do you think it's led to the enthusiasm for Munoz in the outright market this week?
I mean, it could honestly just be the consistent finishes. Mm-hmm. Lots of like top 30s, top 25s, but not a whole lot of upside from there. At 8,800, you will take a top 20 for sure. I don't think he is a must play. He was actually he was more of an other to consider for me, but I mean, maybe just a few sizable wagers got him to shorten.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to the weather for this week at the Byron Nelson. Wind speeds will increase during the day Thursday, starting off around 7 miles per hour before hitting 14 miles per hour around 2 p.m. Friday's more steady. Wind speeds will never get lower than 6 miles per hour or higher than 9. So I think I would give a slight bump up to golfers with earlier tee times Thursday. And I said slight intentionally. I don't think it's a big situation where you're totally overhauling things or stacking tee times, but I would give a slight bump up to guys with early tee times Thursday because they should have a lower overall wind speed than other guys. So slight bump up to the guys early tee times Thursday. Pretty chill the rest of the weekend. So that's the one alteration I'd make for weather based on this week. With that said, let's dive into our player picks here for the AT&T Byron Nelson, starting off in the upper range based on the salaries at FanDuel.com. Brandon, all the way up there. Who are you going to this week on FanDuel?
Justin Thomas. I think he's just my guy this week. The ball striking, really, really good for him. If the greens play easy, benefits JT more than it would others. I honestly implemented into my main spreadsheet, the spike week numbers, and I did not realize how far ahead JT was of everyone else. You love to see that. Love to see it. And so I'm going to go with a little bit of a discount for JT over Scheffler. JT definitely hunting for some wins. So the reverse narrative of Scheffler, if I'm doing this right, I don't know.
He's on the gaff scale? Oh, boy. Dangerous.
And that's good.
Yeah. I have JT as my player pick because of the DGAF narrative against Scheffler. That's the only reason. I have no other data to support that. It's all about the DGAF narrative. It's not that JT leads the field in approach. It's not that he's 12th in distance gained. It's not that he's second in birdies or better gained. It's all the DGAF narrative and that's it. But I do think the JT legitimately is the top guy. Well, I don't know, man. I think for the way I want to build, where I am very salary sensitive this week, I do think he is the preferred option for cash games, but I don't think it's a huge gap. So if you like Scheffler more, go with Scheffler for cash games. But I think that JT right up there too. I want that $200 of salary because it does buy me a lot for this week. Who else do you like in this upper range on FanDuel?
It would buy you access to roster Sam Burns as opposed to Will Zalatoris, which is my preference.
Love it.
Burns, I think, again, just you can use him as your highest salary golfer and still have upside. You can also find ways to use him with another stud, and that's what I'm going to be doing this week to start a lot of my lineups. 93rd percentile in adjusted ball striking, 99th percentile in adjusted short game. Really hard to understate how good Sam Burns is. Just the short game separates him from a lot of other options too. And the putting is going to take a step back, but that's not to say he's bad. He would still be 82nd percentile in expected putting. So nothing against Sam Burns this week.
Yeah, I think that Burns makes a lot of sense. And the angle you discussed, where you can use him either with a stud or as a top guy, that applies to Will Zalatoris too, which is why Zalatoris is my second guy in this upper range. We talked about the form before, but also this is a course fit for Zalatoris too, because he ranks 20th in the field in distance gained the past 50 rounds. He's third in approach. He's 12th in birdies or better gained, which does account for the bad putting. Zalatoris finished 17th here last year, so he has seen this course before. I don't really care about where he finished. I just like that he's seen the course before. I like the discount here at 11-2. Like I said, I'm very on board with a lineup of Burns and Zalatoris as the top two guys. It does change a bit with Burns catching a lot of steam over on FanShare, but I still think that those two guys just grade out really well. They fit the ball striking, they fit the birdie stuff. So I do think that I am on board with that approach, even with Burns catching some popularity. But I just think Zalatoris overall, great option for this week. Let's move to the mid-range. Who are you targeting down there?
Aaron Wise, again, just sticking with Wise. Gonna ride with Aaron Wise till he wins on tour, and then I'll probably stick with him from there. 94th percentile ball striking. It should have legitimate putting regression. Should be about a plus 2.7 rather than a minus 0.14. You'll take that. It's not to say he's going to be the world's best putter, and it's not to say that he'll gain that many strokes on average this week. Just that should be better than he has been, and that should help. 55th here last year, so he played it, didn't putt well, but it's the right type of week, I think, for someone like Aaron Wise to make a lot of birdies, and that's why I'm sticking with Aaron Wise this week.
I had two guys I was considering for this top mid-range slot. One of them was Aaron Wise. Didn't go there, but I thought that he was a great option. Second one was Maverick McNeely, who I did wind up on as my top play here. He's not super long off the tee, but he's long enough to make it work. He ranks 48th in distance gained, but he's 34th in approach the past 50 rounds, and he converts on birdies. Ranks 7th in birdies or better gained, in part because he ranks 17th in bentgrass putting. So he's like Sam Burns light in the sense that he has good ball striking, not great like Burns, but gets birdies, good putter. McNeely, no top 15 finishes since the Genesis, but I still think he has that upside, and I'm very in on him at $9,700. You mentioned you like McNeely too. What puts you on him in addition to Wise?
Yeah, the podcast listeners are going to hate this, but here are the irons for McNeely.
Is that so? Like, see, to me, because you're going this way, it looks like you're trending down, kind of. I don't know. Like, I think you should go this way. I don't know if the cameras are backwards or not. No, that they're not mirrored. Yeah, so you're good. Yeah, that.
That's what I did.
Like, looks like it's going the other way. No, because it's like it's sloping down. You want to slope up. Am I sloping up? I'm sloping. Yeah, you want to slope up like this way. Right hand, right hand, right hand. Use your right hand.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Oh. That's McNeely.
Well, then it'd be going backwards on the timeline. Use your critical thinking skills, Jim.
I don't use those.
Gosh,
I don't use that. You know that.
We're just be like the podcast listeners. Or Rosa, don't watch. Just from
she
the context
howled
clue.
This morning during the solo shot. It was so loud, and I was listening back to it, and I was about to post it, and like, I thought she was barking again because it came through so loud on my microphone. So she's riled up. She got to play with her friend Layla today, so she's in a mood.
Well, I like Maverick McNeely because the irons are improving, and that's kind of the one of the things that's been holding him back. So I think that we can buy in on McNeely. Prefer Wise, but it's more of a coin flip than anything else.
Okay, let's move to the other guys in this mid-range. Who else stands out to you there?
Keith Mitchell, great ball striker, 87th percentile, pretty solid short game as well, 78th percentile. Putter is, he's putting too well, but even with that, should still be a, strongish, above median putter from within 15 feet. Played here last year, finished T26. I think we get the Rosa stamp of approval for Keith Mitchell this week at a very nice salary of $9,300.
She's really into Keith Mitchell, or just loves the mid-range. I don't know, whichever you want to go with. I think either way, something's going on. Anyway, we'll figure that out later. At least she's not biting something. I don't know. I guess I'm taking this as a positive. I'm viewing this as a win right now. She might not be, but I am. I like Mitchell. I think he definitely works for the reasons you mentioned. I also like Sepp Straka. Straka, not super consistent, and he's coming off a miscut at the Wells Fargo, but he does have upside. Straka, since the start of February, has the win at the Honda Classic. He finished 9th at the Players. He was 3rd at the RBC Heritage. And it also does help that some of the missed cuts in there have been like not hideous. Like they've been just, right around the number. Not terrible. Straka is a pretty well-balanced golfer. He ranks 27th in birdies or better gain the past 50 rounds. I do like him at 94. I like Lonto Griffin at 95. Where do you sit on Sepp Straka here at $9,400?
I think I'm probably going to take a week off of Sepp Straka.
Rosa objects vehemently.
Or she agrees. It's hard to say.
No, I know. I can tell. We speak the same language.
He's been doing a lot of putting. That's not to say he's a bad putter. I think that it's just he's been a name for long enough that I might as well go with Keith Mitchell. Or I really like Pereira this week. I think this course should suit him well. So some of these guys with better finishes, getting their name toward the top of the leaderboard a little bit more often, like a Sepp Straka or Matt Kuchar at 94. I'm just going to embrace like a Keith Mitchell, Mito Pereira kind of week instead.
And Luke List behind them for you?
I would rank them Mitchell, Mito, List.
Okay, that works for sure. Let's move down to the value range. Who stands out to you there?
So I am going to diversify with my value plays, but by far the one I like most is Tom Hoagy. I think he's just undersalaried. He could easily be like 90 in that 9,300 discussion, and I would like him just as much. He's missed 2 straight cuts at the RBC Heritage and the Zurich, but he's been having some bad putting luck, losing some strokes, should be gaining some strokes. It's not the hugest gap for him, so I don't want to overstate that, but 89th percentile and adjusted tee to green play with the assumption that he'll putt a little bit better at 8,600. Like, that's pretty phenomenal for me.
Yeah, I think the Hoagy works too, because he's one of those guys where the distance isn't great, but he still makes birdies. And like you said, the putting hasn't been great either, but like it's been bad luck. And he's still made birdies. So I think the Hoagy grades out well at 86 and very on board with him. My top value play is Patton Kizzire, who we discussed before. He has not finished better than 10th since the start of the swing season. So you can question the upside, but I think he has what we call here on the podcast the building blocks for upside. Like his profile a lot. Kizzire ranks 31st in approach the past 50 rounds, 40th in bentgrass putting. Not a bomber, but he's also not short. And Kizzire did show that off, finishing 3rd here last year, as you mentioned in the forum section. So I think you could nitpick the upside. I think that's probably the most valid argument against Kizzire, because he's not the biggest birdie guy, but I do like what he offers here at 9,000. Any final thoughts for you on Kizzire?
Just steady. You like it?
Yeah. All right. Who else do you like down here?
So I flipped from Kizzire to Munoz, who's getting bet down. What you like to see, but again, my core for this week is going to be most likely JT, Burns, and Zalatoris. I thought Hideki could overtake Zalatoris from a sneakiness standpoint, but I don't think I have to go that route. So I'm going to lock in a few of the studs at the top and then rotate in the values. So Munoz will definitely be part of that. He's been really cold putting from the key ranges, which you don't like to see, but that's not really how he's been long-term. And you've seen some big movement on him, which you like. But again, just a good tee to green golfer at his peak. And I think that, he's not going to be popular even if he's getting bet down.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. And Munoz, I think a good safe play and someone I'd be into. Now, I mentioned that I think I kind of view Matt McNeely as being like a light version of Sam Burns. I kind of view Patrick Rogers being a light version of Keith Mitchell in the sense that he can bomb it and he can putt. They're like, Mitchell can occasionally. He can at least make birdies. I kind of feel like Rogers is somewhat similar in that sense. He's not a big birdie maker right now, but he has components to make birdies. And I think that could lead to birdies at this course. Specifically, Rogers, good off the tee, 18th in distance the past 50 rounds. He's also 7th at bentgrass putting. He used that to finish 10th at the Mexico Open a few weeks ago, despite being neutral on approach. So it is a pretty volatile game plan for Rogers, but I do think that volatility comes with upside, and I like that. So I think it's risky to go Rogers, but I'm okay with risk if there's upside. I think there is. What is your read on Patrick Rogers here at $8,600?
I didn't really have one, so I'm looking at him closer here. Really good putter, stable putter, great on bentgrass as well. I think he makes sense, so I'll have to add him to the list. I got to make sure that list doesn't get too long, but
yeah.
I think 5 or 6 golfers in the 8,000 range, or like the 93 and below. He's definitely in that conversation now.
I'll take that as a win. Let's move on to our player picks, our win picks here for the AT&T Byron Nelson based on the current win odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm going to think about mine for a second. Who do you have? Who stands out to you here?
The standout plays for me, like true standouts, are JT, Burns, and Hideki.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go a little bit or a lot shorter than I typically go. I'm going to go with JT as my first play here.
Okay.
Zalatoris, Burns, Hideki also in that conversation for me. I will go with I'll go Zalatoris. The model doesn't quite agree with me there, but
yeah,
I'm going to throw that one out a little bit because I think the course sets up really well for Zalatoris. So I'll say he gets a win leading into the PGA, and then we get hyped up here for Zalatoris.
Okay, I'm going to go Zalatoris too. I know I'm kind of blocking you, but I think that he is like the best option on the board at 21-1. So I'll go with him. And the other option, I consider JT, but I don't want to overlap on both. And I don't want to go super long. I know it's like a volatile event because of like the birdie, the scoreability of it, but also like there are so many studs. The number of dudes you have to beat is tough.
Yeah.
So
Wise and Keith Mitchell were the longer shots I was considering. I'll just try to buy you some more time here. But
A or B?
Bro, B. Come on. B. That's like one of my only nicknames.
A or B?
Yeah, that's what people call me. Yo, what's
people
up?
Call
A
you
or B?
B?
Yeah, every now and then.
Don?
And a select few.
BG? Don. The Dong Dula? That one hasn't caught on yet, but we'll make it happen. If you mash Brandon's names together, Brandon Gadula, in the middle is Dong Dula, and I think that should be his nickname. But anyway, okay. We're going with the narrative. Wedding narrative for Dustin Johnson. It was between him and Burns. Burns was technically B, which means I should have picked him when you said A or B. DJ was A, but my heart says DJ. So we're going to Dustin Johnson off the wedding. Wedding narrative in full effect. The DGAF narrative been canceled for Dustin Johnson forever. So the win picks for me, Zalatoris and DJ. You have JT and Zalatoris. I think that sets up well for this week. Any final thoughts for you, Brandon, on the AT&T Byron Nelson before we send the good people off to fill out their lineups?
While our win picks were no longer than 21-1, I do think it's a week where you can embrace more of that volatility for your actual win. Again, we're trying to hit winners here to gain standings points. You can get a little bit longer with your win picks, but it is a full field, so you got to be a lot of guys. And that also transfers over to DFS, where you can play some more value plays than typical. I'm not going balanced, despite a field that could potentially fall into a balanced, format. But, I think that you can, you can just pivot a lot of different ways, even at the top. Like you can play Hideki or DJ or Xander. I don't think it's a Xander course because he just doesn't like and play well at like Birdie Fest, but
right,
there's a lot of different stuff you can do, and that's really fun if you dig in, throughout the week.
I'd agree with that too. So we're going to send people off now to fill out your lineups. That is all that we have here for today. But a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. We do still have daily MLB podcasts over there, getting you set for each day's slate of MLB, DFS, PGA, UFC, and NASCAR cooking along as well. So hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA1313, my favorite number, but also looks like a capital B. B.
Is that intentional, or is it just because it's your favorite number?
Yeah, it's my favorite number, but it also works.
Okay.
And anyone who doesn't like the number in the Twitter handle, they can just deal with it.
Well, I'm at Jim Sonis, no number. There aren't a lot of Sonises, so, just there. At Jim Sonis, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your lineups. We'll talk to you once again next week for another major PGA Championship coming in hot. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.